Hello. I saw we hit like 750 subscribers, which is a ridiculous number of people. So, thanks. I'm glad you guys like this stuff. Alright, on to the show. Today we're talking about the Pyrotech Powertech and or Plasmatech for all you Vanguard players. This spec is often overshadowed by its AP peers because it doesn't have the same ridiculous turbo burst that AP does. However, Pyrotech is a dot spec. It is great at fluffing numbers. It is great at dot spreading and AoE damage. Has very solid sustained damage and actually has some better defensives than its AP counterpart does. So let's talk about it. Again, brief disclaimer, I am not an expert at this spec. I'm just a guy who kind of knows what he's doing. So I hope you find this video informational. However, if you have any tips or tricks, feel free to leave them in the comments because I'm sure there are smarter people out there than I am. All right, let's roll into it. Pyrotech has a considerable amount of abilities. However, we're going to break them up into 3 different sections to make them a little easier to digest and then explain how they fit in our rotation and or our priority system. The first of our abilities are going to be our dots. The first dot is going to be Incendiary Missile. Incendiary Missile is a very basic dot. It does 30,000 damage over 15 seconds. You plop it on the target, bada bing, bada boom, it sits there and burns for 15 seconds. That's about it. Very simple. You want to have this burning on your target pretty much at all times. It's basically free damage. You can also tab target this on as many targets as you possibly want. That's a boring one. The exciting dot we have is Scorch. Scorch does about 40,000 damage over the course of 30 seconds. So you know it's really cool when it has a 30-second long timer. You can see here when I throw it on the target, it's going to burn there for a very long time and then be ringing in the background forever. Scorch also has a very interesting mechanic where it debuffs the target and makes it take 5% more damage from all tech attacks for the entire duration of Scorch. This is important because all of our primary damaging abilities are tech attacks. It's basically giving you more free damage when you have Scorch in the target. Additionally, when the target dies, if it still has Scorch on it, Scorch will then leap to another player. So it is a self-spreading dot. We want to be spreading Scorch and Incendiary Missile on pretty much every target we come across. It's going to be debuffing the target, and then it's going to be set it and forget it damage on multiple players at once, which is very helpful. We do have some dot spreading that can take place only with Incendiary Missile, but we'll get there in a hot second. All right. Those are our 2 basic dots, but there is a third dot that is applied through our filler abilities. Filler abilities are a second type of ability that we're going to be talking about today. Our filler abilities include Flaming Fist, Punch, Flame Burst, which is a very boring ability, Flame Sweep, which is our little AoE here, and our Rapid Shots. You can see as I tick these abilities, this third and final dot is being applied to the target called Burning. Burning actually does a considerable amount of damage over the course of 6 seconds. Once you set it on the target, it's going to burn and do that extra free bit of damage for us at pretty much all times. Especially with our rotation that we're going to be taking, burning is going to be applied all the time. Let's talk about those 4 different abilities that are fillers in order. The most important filler ability is called Flaming Fist. Flaming Fist does a considerable amount of damage for being a filler ability. We call it a filler ability. It's actually a main ability. However, it fits in the rotation more as a filler. Additionally, when we apply Flaming Fist to the target, you can see it's going to make our rail shot glow. We'll talk about that in a hot second. Just know it's kind of important. Our second main filler ability is going to be Flame Burst. Flame Burst does a burst of damage, about 8 to 9k, but it's going to crit relatively frequently here. And then when we build up 2 stacks of these, either Flame Burst or Flame Sweeps, we're going to be building these stacks of Superhuman Flamethrower, which is going to increase the damage of another ability that we will talk about in a hot second. Now, the way that these filler abilities work together is we're going to be spamming Flaming Fists pretty much as often as possible. It's a great ability. We're going to be filling with Flame Burst until we get to like 40 energy. And then if a Flame Burst would put us over 40 energy, we're going to swap to Rapid Shots instead. So essentially the priority system is Rocket Punch, pretty much always, Flame Burst until you're in energy trouble, and then Rapid Shots when you're in energy trouble. Additionally, our Flame Sweep is used as our filler ability whenever we have like 2 to 3 targets sitting around us. It is an AoE damage. It applies our burning to every single target. It's a very good ability. However, it will bonk your heat very quickly. It generates 15 heat, so you can get into trouble just spamming it over and over again. Again, all these abilities will apply our 3 dots. So let's talk about 3 dots one more time. primary dot, incendiary missile, primary dot, scorch, primary dot of burning, which is applied by using our 3 filler abilities, which is going to be Flaming Fist, Flame Burst, Flame Sweep, and Rapid Shots when you're in energy trouble. Now, allow us to talk about our primary abilities. If you will remember, when we used our Flaming Fist, our Rail Shot began to glow. Rail Shot is our first primary ability. That is because whenever we use Flaming Fist, we're going to get this buff that says Charged Gauntlets, which means that every time we use Rail Shot, it's going to be a critical hit. So our Rail Shot's going to do a lot of damage. You're going to notice that I can't actually use my Rail Shot right now. That is because if you read the text description there, it says that it's only usable against incapacitated targets or targets that are suffering from periodic damage. Well, fortunately, all of our abilities are applying periodic damage, so if we apply our dots here, and then use our Flaming Fist, we can smash that Rail Shot for a fat 30k damage. It's very good. It's a very good ability. The second ability that we're going to be talking about here is our Immolate. Immolate is essentially free damage. You press it, and it does a burst of damage. That's it. That's what it does. You can see, though, when we hit Immolate, it's going to cause our Flame Burst to glow. That's because when we use our Immolate, the next Flame Burst or Flame Sweep that we use is going to be free of heat. That is the primary interaction of Immolate. Again, if we smash Immolate, you can see our Flame Burst and our Flame Sweep are now glowing, which means they would no longer consume heat whenever we use them. So we're going to smash that heat button. Now, you can tell as we're spending heat, I'm going to click off these stacks of Flamethrower. If we get 2 stacks of Flame Burst, that's going to cause us to get these stacks of Superheated Flamethrower, which is going to increase the damage of our Searing Wave. Searing Wave is our third and final primary ability. Searing Wave will do a considerable amount of damage more whenever we have these 2 stacks of Superheated Flamethrower on it. We essentially want to be using Superheated Wave only when we have these 2 stacks of Superheated Flamethrower. So smash that Searing Wave, gives us a considerable amount of damage. Additionally, Searing Wave is the only way that we can dot spread. Now we will only spread our Incendiary Missile dot. It will not spread Scorch. It only spreads Incendiary Missile. What this means is that Pyrotech isn't really that great at dot spreading. It's more of a you have to manually apply all your dots. Now, there will be situations where you can use this dot spreading mechanic to your advantage. Like, you can always actively try to dot spread. However, because of the way that Searing Wave works, it's built out in a cone. You have to be standing in melee together. It's a little tricky, so don't get too discouraged if you don't find yourself dot spreading too much. That's what you have tab target for. Additionally, you can see here when we use our Searing Wave, our Immolate begins to glow. This just means that Immolate is going to do more damage. Hooray! It does like 35,000 damage now. Great. That's all it is. Now, what you can tell here is that all the abilities are kind of working together, right? We have our applying dots to the target, which makes us able to use our Rail Shot. We have our Flaming Fist, which is causing our Rail Shots to glow. We're building our Flame Burst stacks of Superheated Fuel, which means that we can use Searing Wave, which is going to mean that our Immolate's going to be doing more damage next time, right? Oh, and then we can use our Flaming Fist to keep our dots rolling, etc., 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 etc. But we don't just want to be spamming and clicking the glowing buttons. There is actually a rotation to Pyrotech that helps all these abilities kind of flow together. One thing that we can notice here is that our primary abilities of Rail Shot, Immolate, and Searing Wave all have a 14-second cooldown. Now what that means is that we can build a rotation around this system. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to spend our primary abilities followed by filler over and over and over again in this order. Our first ability is going to be a Scorch, then a filler, then Incendiary Missile, then a filler. Now this makes sense, of course, because it's a dot spec, right? We want to be getting our dots rolling as fast as possible. So that's Scorch, filler, Incendiary Missile, filler. Following that, we're going to go Rail Shot, filler, Immolate, filler, Searing Wave, filler. Again, let's run that back one more time. So we're going to have our dots rolling first, right? Scorch, filler. Incendiary Missile, filler. Now you're going to see, because we have our filler of our rocket punch being the rotation, our rail shot's glowing, which means that we can smash it. Then we're going to fill. Then we're going to spend immolate. Then we're going to fill. Then we're going to do searing wave. Then we're going to fill. Scorch. Filler. Incendiary missile. Filler. Rail shot. Filler. Immolate. Filler. Searing wave. Filler. If you can get that very basic rotation down, you're going to be good to go. Now, I can hear some of you asking, why aren't we spending searing wave first? Why aren't we going searing wave into immolate? That's because the buffs given by each of these abilities actually last longer than our rotation does. So even though it feels like we're going out of order for like our immolate and our searing waves, etc., it's actually staying in the perfect order that we need it to in order to get our fillers off. A great way to prep for all of your combat, however, is we can come back here and we can flame sweep out of combat. Flame sweep does not require us to actually be in combat, and so if we flame sweep twice, we're going to have our superheated flamethrower ready to rock and roll, right? So if we have our flame sweep, our superheated flamethrower ready to rock and roll, we do not need to worry about building those stacks later. Additionally, we could searing wave first, and then get our 2 stacks rolling. That way, our consuming flames buff, which is going to give us more damage on immolate, will be still rolling by the time we get into combat. Is a great way to kind of set up for your fight of having searing wave set and then having 2 stacks of flame sweep ready to rock and roll. So that way we roll in here again: scorch, filler, incendiary missile, filler, rail shot, filler, immolate, filler, searing wave, filler, scorch, filler, incendiary missile, filler, rail shot, filler, immolate, filler, searing wave, filler. All of our buttons will be glowing by the time we get into it. If nothing else, if you're just getting to the spec, just nail down that rotation as best as you possibly can. Now you're going to notice when we do this rotation, Scorch actually lasts longer than the rotation does. The rotation lasts about 15 seconds, but Scorch lasts for 30. So once you have that basic rotation down, you can alternate between the base rotation and then instead of plugging in Scorch again and just refreshing that dot that has a 30-second timer on it, you can just fill that with an extra filler and then you'll be good to go. Okay. I know that was a lot of information. Again, it just breaks down to applying your dots, having your filler abilities, and using your rotational abilities in order. If you can nail that, you'll be good to go. In PvP situations, a lot of the times what we're doing is we're not going to be able to actually follow the main rotation. So what I would recommend is get your dots in the target with Incendiary Missile and Scorch, Rocket Punch or Flaming Fist as often as possible, and then smash the glowing buttons. That's really all it comes down to. Your primary damage abilities are going to be your Searing Wave, your Immolate, and your Rail Shot. Just dot spread and you'll be good to go. Let's talk about some of our cooldowns now. Our cooldowns consist of Energy Shield, which gives us 25% DR for 15 seconds. Not that great. Has a 2-minute cooldown. Very lackluster. Fortunately, our Kolto Overload is actually pretty decent on Pyrotech because we have this ability down here called Automated Defenses, which means that when Kolto Overload is active, we get an extra 30% DR, which is actually better than Energy Shield. I know, crazy. Additionally, every time we're attacked, our cooldown of Kolto Overload is reduced by 6 seconds, which means that we can get our Kolto Overload off with relative frequency. Now, Kolto Overload will only heal you to, I think, 35%. However, it is a way to delay death for a considerable amount of time, and you'll be having it in a lot more fights because of the fact that it's going to be having the cooldown reduced by 6 seconds almost all the time. Next, we're going to talk about Power Yield. Power Yield is an ability that lasts for as long as you're getting attacked. It has a base length of 10 seconds. However, every time you're attacked, you're going to get an additional stack of Power Yield, and it's going to last for essentially longer, up to 30 seconds. It's going to increase your armor by 40% for every stack. So if we have 5 stacks rolling, it's going to increase our armor by like 200%. I think I did my math right. I might be wrong. Additionally, it's going to increase our damage by 2% every time we get a stack. So if we have all 5 stacks rolling, we can have an extra free 10% damage just for getting attacked, and we're going to be a lot tankier for it because a lot of our damage reduction comes from just having heavy armor. Heavy armor is the primary way that we reduce damage coming in as Powertech, which means that we don't have to really think about it, which is very nice. Finally, let's talk about our offensive cooldown known as Explosive Fuel. Explosive Fuel is very cool because it increases the crit chance by 25% for 15 seconds. However, we're going to take a tactical here called Superheated Fuel, which means that whenever we activate, we smash that Explosive Fuel button, we're going to get an increased critical chance of 100% on all of our flame attacks, which is all of our attacks. We're going to be critting every single time we click an ability for the duration of Explosive Fuel, which is about 15 seconds. It is 15 seconds of mad, crazy burst damage, which is very cool. This tactical is augmented by the fact that we're taking the Meteor Brawler set piece. Meteor Brawler is very nice. For the damage is pretty nice. However, the primary benefit of Meteor Brawler is the heat reduction. You can see in the 4-piece here, the heat reduction of Rocket Punch and our Flaming Fists and a lot of our primary abilities has been reduced, which means that we have a better heat management system. Heat is very tricky to juggle in Pyrotech and Pyrotech because the more heat you generate, the slower it regenerates. Which means that if you go up past like 40 heat, you're going to screw yourself very quickly and be stuck using rapid shots for a very long time. Fortunately, because of the set bonus, we have reduced heat costs on most of our primary abilities. Additionally, once Explosive Fuel ends, all of our abilities will cost 50% less heat for 20 seconds, which is very, very handy. Additionally, if we throw off on our Explosive Fuel here, you can see we're building these 6 stacks of Firefall. What will happen is that once this Explosive Fuel is done, these 7 stacks of Firefall will detonate and do a moderate amount of damage, as in, boom, 60,000 damage in an area of effect. It's a very, very large amount of damage. It's very nice. It's a lot of damage very quickly, especially on top of the fact that we're going to be critting with all of our abilities because of the tactical we're taking. So, yeah, it's pretty good. It's very fun. While we're on the topic of this gear, let me show off what stats I'm running real quick. I'll throw the actual stats you should be running in the description below. Essentially, what you want to do is you want to get your alacrity to like 1200, 1220-ish to cross the first GCG threshold. And then you want to get your accuracy to 105% in PvP and 110% in PvE. Did I say that right? 105 in PvP, 110 in PvE. That's the way it is. The rest of your stats are going to dump into crit. It's your dump stat. It'll be handy later on. However, it doesn't have the same requirements that accuracy and alacrity do. From there, just stack your power. You'll be good to go. All right, let's take a look at our utilities now. These are the primary utilities that we take. The first is Iron Will, is going to be reducing the cooldown of our hydraulic overrides by 10 seconds, which is very handy. Additionally, we get our CC breaker back every 30 seconds faster, which is very nice. Our gyroscopic alignment jets is going to be venting 20 heat whenever we're stunned or immobilized, and then our abilities do 10% more damage. Again, it just helps out with our heat management, especially in PvP when there's stuns flying all over the place, there's roots flying all over the place. It's passive heat generation, which is very nice for us. Reflective armor is essentially free damage. Whenever you're attacked, you might just do a little bit of damage. That's it. Free damage. We like it. Finally, engulfing flames is that it increases the damage of flame sweep by 25%. Essentially, whenever we're in an AoE situation, this is what we use now because it does a lot more damage with our flame sweep. Again, flame sweep being one of our filler abilities as opposed to our flame burst. It's just more damage on our flame sweep whenever we're surrounded by targets. So, very nice. In Masterful, we're going to take Hitman. Hitman is going to reduce the damage you take from AoE damage by 30%, which is very nice. There's a lot of AoE damage running around, especially in like PvE and PvP. Reducing that AoE damage, very tasty. Additionally, we get our interrupt back 2 seconds faster, which is just handy. Next, we're going to take Mutilating Shards. Mutilating Shards is a 75% slow for 15 seconds. This is going to come off of our Shatter Slug. Shatter Slug is not one of our primary abilities. It is more just used as a straight up slow. It is an AoE ability, so you can slow an entire enemy team by 15% or by 75% for 15 seconds, which is just catastrophic. It's an AoE slow. Very, very tasty. It turns a useless ability into a very, very useful ability. Next, we'll be taking Efficient Suit here. Efficient Suit allows us to use our Kolto Overload essentially as a stun breaker. Now, especially with our Kolto Overload getting triggered much more often because of the cooldown reduction we get from getting attacked, it is free stun breakers more often. Very nice. Additionally, the range of our grapple and our shoulder cannon has been extended by 10 meters, and it takes away the heat cost of our electro dart and our carbonize. It's very nice. Very handy. Next, we have our combustion chamber. We talked about this before with power yield. This turns our power yield into an offensive cooldown as well by increasing damage that we do for every stack that we have a power yield. It's very handy. Finally, we have our overdrive. Overdrive turns our hydraulic override into a speed machine. Hydraulic override essentially stops you from getting rooted for 6 seconds here. So this is our normal run speed, and then we turn on the hydros and we can zoom all over the place with our crazy supersonic speed granted to us by hydros. It's a great way to move around the map, especially as a melee class. We like having increased movement. That's the very basics of what Pyrotech is. One ability that we didn't cover here is Shoulder Cannon. Shoulder Cannon is off the global cooldown. What happens is you press it, and then it's going to be slowly loading these missiles over the course of like 20 seconds or so. And then you can spend them preferably with our explosive fuel as like a burst window. It's just free damage that you can just smash whenever you feel like it. Pretty handy. Pretty handy. Let's run through that rotation one more time just to make sure we have it down, right? So, Scorch, Filler, Incendiary Missile, Filler, Rail Shot, Filler, Immolate, Filler, Searing Wave, Filler, Scorch and or Filler, Filler, Incendiary Missile, Filler, Rail Shot, Filler, Immolate, Filler, Searing Wave, Filler, Scorch, Filler, Incendiary Missile, Filler, Rail Shot, Filler, Immolate, Filler, Searing Wave, Filler. If you can nail that rotation, you'll be fine. I promise. It's a very fun spec. I hope you enjoy it. Let's hop into a PvP match. I'm thinking I'll do a commentary on this one to kind of explain my thought process, and we'll roll from there. All right. 2 seconds. I just realized I missed the camera. 2 seconds. All right. We got lucky. We got a Voidstar Aruski here. So to start with the match, we're going to use our Flame Suite to be building our 2 stacks of Superheated Flamethrower, and then using our Shoulder Cannon to get that ready to rock and roll. It's a great way to be spending the pre-match, doing something a little bit useful before we get going. Now, because we are a Powertech, of course, we're going to hold W right into the middle of the entire enemy team. Let's find a target and then unleash the burst. Again, just applying both dots, and then hopefully they're all going to collapse on us, which they do, which is fantastic, which means that we can back up, use our flamethrower to kind of spread our dots a little bit, and then just be filling with our flame sweep. And I can see here we started off with our energy shield for that passive DR, and then used our Kolto to get a little bit of that healing on top of an extra 30% damage reduction. On top of that, because we have everyone on us, we popped our third and final cooldown, which is our stacks of power yield. Well, I'm sorry, I just forgot what that was called. Now, if you're noticing, the cooldown of my Kolto is actually reduced back down to 40 seconds already after all that time. It's usually a 3-minute cooldown, and now 12, 5, and then 0, I have my Kolto back. That is the power of the cooldown reduction of Kolto. It is very, very useful for having that little bit of extra healing throughout the entire match. On top of that, really the passive 30% damage resistance we get during Kolto is very useful. Try to get out of here, but we can't. But fortunately, we planted the door, which is all fine and dandy. Now we can use our Hydros here to run back into combat right away to get rocking and rolling. You can see here we're just tab targeting using our Incendiary Missile to dot spread right now. Our Scorch has a 10-meter range, which is nice, but it makes dot spreading very difficult, especially when you're just running into combat. So it's much easier to just dot spread with your Incendiary Missile instead of your Scorch whenever you're trying to do the massive dot spread damage, especially when you're running right into combat, trying to figure out who you're going to get rolling on, etc. Now down here, I believe I finally find their healer. I mark him up and smash that gun icon. You can actually keybind a target marker. So what I have done is I've keybind my gun icon to an ability, or to my right slash key / my question mark key and the bottom right hand corner of my keyboard. So that way I don't have to right click his portrait and mark him. I can just smash that key and then mark him for my entire team to see. Teammates are always kind of dumb because you can't communicate with them, right? You're not going to be sitting here throughout the entire operation saying, hey, everyone, please focus the target named X, Y, and Z name. Instead, what you can do is if you just smash that target, apply target icon button, that is the best way to communicate with your team that this is the person that needs to die, right? It is a very quick and easy way to communicate with essentially a bunch of monkeys that are all playing at different computers. People see the target icon and they run to them. That's essentially all that happens. Now I see that there's a mass of people coming up here on the right-hand side, and then we're also capping the left-hand side door. So if we can spend some of our cooldowns here and live for a while, there's a good chance we're going to get this door down. So we spend our shield, and we spend our Kolto for our passive healing. And now we have the chance to spend our power yield one last time on top of it to get that passive DR, but I don't think we actually spend it here. No, we don't. Never mind. I lied to you. I forgot how it actually worked. But it ended up working out. We pulled everyone to the right-hand side, and then they were able to plant the left-hand side door. Again, it's very tasty when the entire enemy team gets to stack on us because our flame sweep spreads our dots, which is obviously, spreads our dots. It applies our burning dot, which is great. Additionally, it's much easier to spread using our searing wave. So you can see we haven't really done much in terms of burst damage here. We've really just been applying dots and then slowly burning down groups of targets instead of burning down one target at a time. However, we can start to see here, okay, here's one target. When you're using our rotation, immolate, filler, sweep, filler, applying our dots, get the dots back on him, filler, 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 and there's all of your burst damage in your Powertech. I'm sorry, Pyrotech. Wow, I cannot talk today. I'm so sorry for that. Just kind of showcasing the single target abilities of Pyrotech. It still can do single target damage. It's not as great as the Powertech of a AP variety. However, it is still fairly good. Again, just hopping on their main healer here. We're going to pop our superheat fuel, try to build our stacks of Meteor Brawler. However, this guy dies before those stacks go off, and then this guy is going to die as well before those stacks go off, which leaves us in a bit of a pickle. So we're going to murder him and then leap to this guy just in time for the stacks to go off, and then nuke him for like 40 or 60k damage, which is very good, forcing him to pop off his cooldowns. It's very tasty. So instead of channeling through all those Mercs cooldowns, we're going to swap over here and start to burn down this other Merc. There's no real sense in trying to burn through a Merc when they're going through all those cooldowns like that. Like, let them sit there and just let those cooldowns wear off, and then we'll come back to him later. Because otherwise, he's just going to sit at 70% health the entire time, and that's no bueno. One ability that we haven't really talked about for Merc yet is the ability for Mercs, or I'm sorry, not Mercs, for Powertechs, is their ability to taunt. You have an AoE and a single target taunt, which is great for passively, for one, protecting your teammates. Because what will happen is that if you taunt a target in PvP, if they attack any other target besides you, they're going to do, I think, 25% less damage. I think my number might be off there. They're going to do less damage to other targets if they're not attacking you. It's a great way to, for one, passively build medals because it's off the global cooldown. So you don't have to think about, oh, am I spending my taunt all the time? I need to focus more on spending my taunts than I am right now. But once you get into the habit of taunting pretty much on cooldown, you're going to be, for one, helping your team survive a lot more, which I'm sure they'll appreciate. And then two, just racking up free medals because so many people don't taunt. If you are on a Powertech, a Sin, or a Juggernaut, you should be taunting all the time in PvP. It is free DR and free medals. So that is my rant about why DPS should taunt. You can see we pretty much smashed these guys here. A lot of it, what happened was we just we pulled them away from the door, and then we had somebody going back and stealth and capping that door. So it's pretty much game over from here. This is free damage farm from this point on, which is very tasty for us. We're Powertechs. We're Pyrotechs. We like that. Get these guys to stack as much as possible, and then hopefully nuke all of them at once if we're lucky. Probably not all at once, but you know, a man can dream. Tread lightly on my dreams, friends. All right. Again, because we're Powertechs, we're going to hold W right into the middle of everyone here. We are not as afraid of them as they are of us. I mean, we can just kind of tell that from the way that this entire match has played out. So we're just going to hold W into them all, try to wait for them to all gather up. You can see their healer is running away. I appear to be the only person on the healer. So we try to communicate with our fellow monkeys, but it doesn't appear to be working. Now I see this cluster of melee that are all kind of gathering up here. A great place to gather people up is on the door, because inevitably people kind of understand that, like, hey, the door is kind of important in PvP. So what will happen is that all the melee will start to stack up here, because they'll see, oh, there's a bunch of guys stacking up. We should all do AoE. Little do they know that I am the god of AoE, not them. So if you can drag people to the door, it's going to drag both the damage farmers and the objective players to one spot where you can smash all of them at once in a very satisfying bursterooski here, which is just nice. You can see we're just smashing the buttons as they glow, especially in PvP. It's a lot harder to stick to a straight up damage rotation in PvP because you're swapping targets so often. Things change very quickly. So instead of worrying about a straight up damage rotation like you do in PvE, it's much easier to just be dot spreading to everyone and then smash that searing wave whenever you have the 2 stacks and then pressing glowing buttons from there. It's not as sexy, however, it is very, very useful. Now we have a problem here in that we are now in a 2v3 with me half dead. So we're going to be slowly spending through our DCDs here. We're going to spend our Culto to kind of keep us alive for a little bit longer, and then our shield to help us endure. Culto is not a guaranteed you're going to live forever, so if you need to stack it over with your other DCDs, that is perfectly fine. You can see here we're going to spend our Hydros and then use our Shatter Slug as they group slow, for that 75% slow, to make sure that I grab that Culto before anyone else does. They are not allowed to have that Culto, only I am. We ended up burning them all down with our massive AoE damage, which is just chef's kiss, very, very good. And then start heading back the other direction. Now, unfortunately, it appears that our teammates are very busy fighting over here, not on the door. If only they had listened to us and stacked on the door instead, we would have been fine, but that's okay. I'm not too worried about this team at this point, to be frank. So we find their healer, and then start doing big boy damage. You can see that despite taking a fair bit of damage, our DCDs have actually allowed us to survive for a relatively decent amount of time here. I know I've shit on the Pyrotech and Vanguard DCDs before, because you do need a healer to actually take advantage of all of the defensive abilities that the Powertech and Vanguards have. However, when you combine with a decent healer like we have here in Gina, it's actually pretty moderate defensives. It's one of those things where it can't do well on its own. Well, you can do well on your own as Powertech. However, it is severely limited compared to the defensive cooldowns of other classes, right? So finding ways to juggle your cooldowns, try not to blow them all at once, and then kind of LOS when necessary. One of the key abilities in PvP is knowing when to heroically run away from the enemy team. So not standing in the middle of it. So like all these guys over there, if we stood in the middle of that, we'd be dead almost immediately here. So instead we're going to stand off to the side, do a little damage, do a little farm, try to find our healer again in Gina, but we are running out of tricks here. We could spend our DCDs here to try to live a little bit longer. So just got to make your own decisions of, hey, is this actually going to be worth it or is it not? I try to spend my power yield here and then try to live longer for my healer to get me up, but it doesn't work out. And the real shame of that is that now the entire other team gets to sit there on the other side, and then we get to sit back here and do nothing and be sad for a while. So hopefully they're all going to die soon. Our healer just died, which means that they should all be knocked over relatively quickly here. So I don't get to miss out on the farm for too long, just a moderate period of time. This case is a great example to demonstrate one of the Powertech's great utilities, which is Grapple. Grapple has a 40-meter range and pulls a target to you. In this case, we're going to pull this guy into the fire. So RIP to him. It's, I remember you. Will you remember me? That is the question. Grapple is a great ability. It has a 45-meter range and has a 45-second cooldown. So if you have someone that's trying to kite away from you, it's one more way to close the gap and get on them. So that way you can get up into their face and then do that all fat melee damage that we can do with the power of Pyrotech and joy and self-confidence. We're just hopping back and forth here trying to see where they're coming. Doesn't look like they have got the other bridge down yet, but that doesn't mean they can't. The game is not over yet, but it's kind of over, so just making sure that they do not get through this door before too long. Otherwise, there's a slight chance they can make it through and seal the game, but at this point, we're starting to get down to the dying hours. We find their healer. We taunt him like a pro. For those of you who don't know, if you taunt a healer, it does absolutely nothing. Healers don't do any damage, so taunting them is kind of useless. Kind of very useless. So don't do that. Do as I say, not as I do. In conclusion, for the Pyrotech, it is a great spec in terms of like AoE farming, Very satisfying to play when you play it well. It has much better defensive utility or defensive abilities compared to its advanced prototype and tactics peers, especially with that Koto override defensive or damage reduction and the defensive cooldown actually being a less cooldown every time you're attacked. It can be very nice, however, it requires support to really thrive. It does great AoE damage. You can see here, just stand in the middle of these people, flame sweep away, do a lot of damage in the world, pretty nice. While also having a moderate amount of single target damage that's more sustained damage than burst damage. Very fun spec to play. I would highly encourage you guys to check it out, especially if you're bored of the tactics and or the AP playstyle. Pyrotech is a very refreshing change of pace that is kind of overshadowed by its peers, but should it be? It's a lot of fun. So you can see here we give it to our lad who did all the objectives. We did about 10, almost 11k damage per second, which is very nice. We also did almost 500,000 protection, which is great because we were just throwing out taunts the entire time. Our largest hit came from a Meteor Brawler, which is at 60k. But other than that, that is the Pyrotech in a nutshell. I hope you guys liked this video, and there are more coming soon. More guides, too. So stay tuned, and thanks for the support. Ta-ta!